Tyler said it would be fun. He had that kind of smile that always meant trouble, but I followed him anyway. We were staying at my aunt's house for the summer, out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by flat land and empty barns. Tyler had just turned 24. I was 18. Too old to be scared of ghost stories? Or so I told myself. The house sat just past a dried-out creek bed and a collapsed fence. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't looking. Trees leaned away from it. Grass didn't grow near it. The windows were boarded up unevenly, and the door hung on a rusted hinge. Locals called it the Hollow House. No one knew why. The story said it used to be a safe house for a cult back in the 70s. People went missing, lights were seen, but nobody ever proved anything, and most stopped talking about it altogether. Tyler didn't care about stories. He wanted to make a video, something creepy to post online. I was just supposed to hold the flashlight. When we got there, it was almost sunset. The front steps cracked under our feet, but we didn't fall through. Tyler gave me a wink, then pushed the front door open. It wasn't locked. It didn't even creak. It just opened, like it had been waiting. Inside, the air was stale and hot. Everything smelled like metal and old carpet. We stepped into a narrow hallway lined with peeling wallpaper and dead bugs. There were footprints in the dust, not ours. I stopped, but Tyler didn't. He moved through the rooms quickly, pointing his camera, cracking jokes. The living room had furniture, a sofa, a cabinet with broken glass, a standing lamp with no bulb. But what caught my attention were the walls, covered in children's drawings, dozens of them. Crayon people with big eyes and no mouths, stick figures inside red houses. One drawing showed a room full of people without faces, all pointing toward a closed door. None of that seemed to bother Tyler. We found stairs at the end of the hall. I stayed behind while he climbed. His light swept across the upper floor, but he didn't say anything for a while. Then he called out, "There's something weird up here." I went up. There were 3 bedrooms and a small bathroom, all of them empty, but the walls weren't straight, the air smelled different, and one door didn't match the others. It had no handle, just a smooth wooden surface, built flush with the wall. But it wasn't sealed. A narrow gap ran along the bottom, and from inside we heard a soft humming. Not a machine, not the wind. It was voices, several of them, low and steady, whispering just under the edge of hearing. Tyler crouched next to the door and pressed his ear against it. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. "Say something," he said. I hesitated, then leaned forward and said, "Hello?" At first there was nothing. Then a voice answered, "Hello." My voice. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't a repeat. It was a reply. Tyler stood up fast. He looked shaken, but excited. "Dude, that's insane." I turned away. "Enough. I'm going outside." I made it halfway down the stairs before the air changed. A sudden pressure, like the whole house exhaled. I turned around. Tyler was gone. "Tyler?" I called, but there was no answer. I ran back up. The door with no handle was now slightly open. I called his name again and stepped closer. The gap was wider, but I couldn't see through. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside, there was no room, just a wall, flat, undisturbed, seamless. Tyler had disappeared, and from behind the wall I heard my own voice whisper again, "Hello?" I didn't move right away. Something about that blank wall felt heavier than anything else I'd seen in the house. It made no sense. Tyler wasn't the kind of person to wander off quietly, and he wouldn't have just left without a sound. I backed away from the doorway and looked down the hallway. Everything seemed exactly the same. Crooked walls, thick dust, that faint metallic smell still in the air. I called his name again. No response. I pulled out my phone, no signal. I turned on the flashlight and tried to steady my breathing. The door behind me was still open, but now the wall inside looked different. The smooth surface had a slight curve to it, barely noticeable unless you stared at it. I leaned in, and under the light I saw it pulse softly, like something was breathing on the other side. I raised my hand out of instinct, but stopped. I didn't want to know what was behind it. I turned back toward the stairs, ready to get out of there, but where the stairs had been was now another hallway. Narrower, longer, no windows, no natural light. The wallpaper was the same, but it felt wrong. Too clean, too even, like it had just been put there. The air had changed too. It was warmer, dense, like being inside something alive. I stepped forward cautiously, feeling the floor creak under my weight, but the sound of my footsteps came with a delay, like an echo that didn't belong to me. I stopped, turned around quickly, but saw nothing. The hallway behind me was dark and empty. Along the new corridor there were doors on either side, 7 in total, 3 left, 3 right, 1 at the very end. All of them were closed, solid, and handleless, just like the first one upstairs. Each had a bulge at the center, that same soft curve, like they weren't made of wood but of something else. I walked slowly past the first door, then the second. The third door on the right had a small crack near the base. A flicker of light came through it, gray and cold, like it was coming from deep underground. I crouched beside it and listened. I could hear breathing, but it wasn't human. It was slow, damp, irregular. It didn't match any rhythm I recognized, and every hair on my body stood on end. Before I could move, a heavy thump slammed into the door from the other side, then another. I backed away, heart racing, and stared at the wood, waiting for the next blow, but nothing followed. Then I heard a quiet creak behind me. I turned slowly. At the far end of the hallway, the 7th door had opened slightly, just enough to reveal a sliver of carpet and the edge of a shadow. Something lay in the doorway. I took a step closer, flashlight aimed low. It was a shoe, Tyler's shoe. I moved toward it carefully, torn between fear and hope. As I approached, the door opened wider. The room beyond was dim, the walls bare, the floor scuffed and dusty. There was no furniture. In the far corner stood Tyler, facing the wall, completely still. "Tyler," I called. He didn't react. He didn't even twitch. He entered the room slowly, unsure if I should run or reach for him. The moment I crossed the threshold, the doors slammed shut behind me. The sound made my chest tighten. I turned around. No handle. No visible way out. When I looked back, Tyler had turned. But it wasn't Tyler. He looked the same. Same jacket, same hair, same face. But his expression was empty. His eyes were too dark, too flat. When he opened his mouth, nothing came out. He just raised his hand and pointed toward the wall behind me. I turned. A mirror hung there, old and cracked down the middle. In the reflection, I stood alone. Tyler wasn't next to me, but the room wasn't empty. In the mirror, 5 shadowy figures stood behind me. Their faces were blank. Their arms were raised, all of them pointing directly at me. I spun around in panic. No one was there. When I turned back to the mirror, the figures were gone. But I remained. And the door was still gone. Just 4 walls, and my own reflection still watching me from inside the glass. I lost track of time inside that room. There was no light source, yet I could see. The walls weren't solid anymore. They pulsed slowly, like lungs wrapped in plaster. The air smelled like wet stone and burnt wires. The mirror still showed me alone, even as I moved. I tried to look away, but something about it held me there. Like I was watching someone else wear my skin. I called for Tyler again. No answer. I banged on the walls. Nothing. Then the voices returned, not whispers this time. Clear. Multiple. They said fragments of memories. My memories. Phrases from old conversations, childhood moments, things I hadn't thought about in years. My mother saying goodnight. A teacher calling my name. Tyler laughing. A girl I once liked, whispering something she never really said. The voices weren't speaking to me, they were speaking as me. That's when I understood. This place didn't keep you trapped like a cell. It absorbed you, piece by piece, voice by voice. And once enough of you was taken, the rest didn't matter. The house didn't want visitors. It wanted stories, and I had brought mine willingly. I sat on the floor. The walls breathed slower now, as if satisfied. Then I heard something new. Footsteps, light, hesitant, coming from the hallway outside. I stood quickly and backed away from the doorless wall. The mirror flickered. The 5 faceless figures returned. But they weren't pointing anymore. They were watching. The wall behind me began to shift. It opened, not like a door, but like a mouth. And through it, I saw another hallway, the one from before, and walking down it, flashlight in hand, was a girl. Young, maybe 17, alone. I tried to shout. My voice didn't come out. I pressed my hands to the glass of the mirror. No sound. No crack. No response. The girl paused at one of the doors. I watched as she reached for it, hesitant. Then I heard it. My own voice. Hello? The same tone I'd used at the start. The same question. She froze. Then, slowly, she said, Hello? The mirror went dark, and the wall closed behind her.